Evening to everyone. Okay, let me just press that little thing. On what must be the coldest and wettest night of this winter so far. So I apologize for any background noise because it's probably the rain on my roof. But I hope you're all warm and cozy at home. Tonight, it's a special welcome to someone watching from their hospital bed. Hope you're feeling much better soon. And then on a serious note to all of you, our thoughts are with all of you who might know of or have lost someone special to COVID. This is all very sad and certainly a very worrying time indeed. So let's all be extra careful and try and get over this. I'd like to say many thanks to those of you who've renewed your memberships for another year, and a reminder of those who haven't yet that they are due by the end of July. Then also, I hope you're all painting, or at least thinking about your entry for our competition in August. The theme is distance, and all the information is in the newsletter. Tonight, we welcome fellow member and exceptionally talented Elize Bezuidenhout. She's going to show us how she paints those eyes. So I hope you have your notebooks and pens ready. Elize is going to tell us a little bit about herself and her art journey, and then share a video with us. As usual, please send questions using the chat function, or you can WhatsApp me, and then I can ask her at the end. Okay, I think my number is 0723221745, which I think most of you have got and was on the email. Okay, so I think it's over to Elize. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue, and welcome everyone. Yes, I'm going to start with just a few questions that I usually get asked quite a bit, and Sonia helped me to compile this because I find it quite hard to talk about myself. So this is not really about myself, it's more about my career and how I do things. Okay, the first thing is my education. I'm a qualified graphic designer. I studied graphic design at Pretoria Technikon, and I worked as a graphic designer for almost 30 years, or just over 30 years. And in the end of 2014, I've decided to take the leap and become a full-time artist. Up to that point, I used to paint and draw a lot. That's always been my passion, but yes, I thought it would be a little bit of a risk to stop working and painting full-time. But yeah, my passion has always been fine arts and painting and drawing. Okay, then how did my career as a professional artist developed? I think what helped quite a bit for my career to develop was I joined the art society, CAS and SASA. Just before I became a full-time artist. And I think that actually helped me quite a bit, because it's quite important to exhibit and to get your work out there. And I never exhibited before I joined the art societies. And I think that really helps a lot. It's fun to exhibit. You'll get your work out there. You get to chat with people that's like-minded. And that's one thing when we were still living in Gauteng. I found that I worked very isolated. I never met any artists, and that changed drastically since we moved to Cape Town and I joined the art societies, which is absolutely wonderful. I think it's very important to mix with like-minded people. It helps you to grow a lot. Then when it gets to galleries and agents, I find as an artist, it's extremely hard to market yourself. And I think when you join the art societies and you exhibit with them, it helps a lot and you get noticed. So that's the way I got noticed, and I ended up with a gallery and agent that I'm with. Somebody saw my work at Kirstenbosch and told him about my work, and he contacted me. I'm not one of those people who can take my art to a gallery and ask them to sell it. But I think if you do have the personality to do that, I think it's a very good idea. But one tip that I can give you, it's extremely important not to just take your work and to walk into a gallery. Make an appointment. If you make an appointment and set up an appointment and take the actual works with, instead of emailing and sending examples of your work. It will be to your, way much more to your advantage if they see the actual work. Because some paintings tend to look much better on photographs, and some tend to look worse on photographs. So the actual work is actually quite important. Never lose hope. One thing that you have to remember is you cannot please all of them all of the time. So some people will absolutely love your work. Some people will not like it at all. As long as you believe in yourself and you paint because you enjoy painting and you paint for yourself. Never paint in a way that you think somebody else would like you to paint. Then your work doesn't come from your heart. If your work comes from your heart, then it will show in your work and it will speak to people. So that's extremely important. Paint what you enjoy painting. You spend so much time painting and you spend hours in front of that canvas. So you have to enjoy it. It will show in your work if you don't enjoy it. And if you paint with the idea to sell, you become too commercialized, and it will also start to show in your work. If your work sells, it's a bonus. So that's one thing that I also did was before I gave up my full-time job, my real job to become an artist, was that I made sure that that I had a backup plan, because you cannot rely on selling paintings. It's not a given. So that's one of the reasons why I started to teach as well. I didn't realize that I would enjoy teaching the workshops as much as what I do. So that's really a blessing. But it's always good to have some form of a backup plan and not only rely on the selling of your paintings. Okay, my studio setup. I've got a purposely built studio, which is about 5 by 6 meters big, so it's quite spacious. I built it with the idea to teach classes and workshops in my studio as well. But since COVID, I haven't used it for classes or workshops at all. So at this stage, it's exactly actually the way I want it. I've got my corner with the TV, and I've got a desk with my computer, and I've got my corner where I paint, and I've got a corner that's set up to take my classes and workshops at this point of time in my studio cannot continue, but I am carrying on with workshops that's at other premises, other provinces, other towns. I actually do enjoy that quite a bit of traveling involved, but I really enjoy doing that. Then the hours that I spend in my studio, I paint a minimum of about 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. So I put a lot of hours in it. I think it's extremely important to be very disciplined. And especially when you work with a gallery as well than an agent, they expect you to produce. Now, when I say produce, it's not quantity. They want paintings from you on a regular basis, but they want the quality as well. And that's where my agent and I have a very good relationship. He knows exactly what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how long it takes me to do a painting. In the beginning, when I started to paint portraits, it took me about a day to paint a portrait. Now it takes me about 3 weeks to do a portrait. And it's because I get so much more, I want it so much more perfect. You know, where I would previously let something go, now I won't give up until I'm happy with it. I will not let a painting leave my studio until I'm happy with it. If I'm not happy with it, I get rid of it. It doesn't happen very often. I never give up on a painting, but 2 or 3 times that I can remember that I've decided, okay, this is not working. I will not drop my price because I'm not that happy with the painting. I just will not let it go out of my studio. I will rather put it in my storeroom, or I will just destroy it. So I have to be happy with it. So that's very important. And luckily my agent as well, he's very honest. So he will tell me, no, maybe change this a little or change that a little. And sometimes he's happy with it and he wants it, and I will tell him, no, I'm not quite happy with it yet. So it's very important to have that honest relationship with each other as well. What helps as well is he will give me ideas to try. I will listen. Sometimes I will try it and see where it takes me. Sometimes it works very well. Sometimes I do not agree with it. But I think what is important, you always have to stay true to yourself. And I think he understands that as well. So when it gets to my detail and my realism that I use in the face, I'm not prepared to compromise on that. I am prepared to compromise on backgrounds and things around the face and maybe the scale of the painting, but not my actual style. I think my style is who I am. I've accepted the fact that I paint a lot of detail. When I started to paint, especially portraits, people always tend to tell you, you have to paint looser, you have to loosen up. I believe if it's not your personality, you will not, you might be get very good at it, but you will never be the best of it, and you will never have that X factor that I think is quite important to have in your work. So if you are inclined to do a lot of detail, go with it, develop it, but stay true to yourself. But if I walk into a gallery, the work that always attracts my attention first is the more loose work. So I can understand why people prefer more loose paintings, but I just can't paint it. It's paint like that. It's not me. It's not my personality. So I've made peace with it, and I've went with it, and I've developed it. And I'm so much more pleased with the work that I do since I've accepted it, and I've decided, let's just go with it and develop it to the best that you can. So I think that's very important. Always stay true to yourself. It's a wonderful journey. You have to find out who you are. And your style change over time as well, without you really realizing it. If I compare my work now in comparison to what I've done 3 years ago, I noticed that my style has changed quite a bit. But it's okay. That's part of the journey. You will find at times you get a little bit bored with what you are doing. Then you will try a few different things. That's not too far from your style, but just a few extra elements that you start to play with, because you have to still enjoy what you're doing. And sometimes I will go a little bit back to what I was doing before, and sometimes I will try something else. So that's part of the journey, and it's a wonderful journey. And it's okay if you make mistakes. You won't learn if you don't make mistakes. So it's not, if you feel you have to get rid of a painting, it's not happening the way you want to, then it's okay, especially while you're still growing as an artist. It's a little bit harder when you're working with an agent, because they expect you to do a perfect painting every time. But they do, accept that you are human as well, yeah. But the thing is, you have to work hard at it. You're not going to grow. I always tell my students as well, if you go for music lessons, you go for a lesson once a week and you practice every day. It's the same with painting. You can't go for a lesson only once a week and not practice. So it's extremely important to set some time out every day where you can just practice a little bit. So my lighting in the studio is not perfect to paint at night. I find that my color shift during daytime and nighttime is a little bit too much. So I'm still working on getting the perfect light conditions for working at night. So what I will do is at night, I will work on the background or the clothes, but not on the skin, because I find the color shifts on the skin between daytime and nighttime is a little bit too much. My studio got big sliding doors towards the southern side, so I get the cool light in, which is perfect for daytime painting, but I haven't got the perfect solution yet to for nighttime painting. Okay, the paints that I use Michael Harding. I find it's a wonderful paint to work with. The consistency of the paint is excellent. The quality of the paint, the pigment, everything it's really, I find it's one of the best paints, well, the best paint that I've worked with. There's a lot of brands that I haven't worked with before, but I think with everything that I've worked with, Michael Harding is definitely the best. I've got a go-to palette that I always use, and I use it for portraits and animals. So then I've got a few nice to have colors, which is wonderful to work with. Sometimes I will use it in a painting, sometimes I will use it a lot, sometimes I will not use it at all. But the colors that I always use is my titanium white, and I've got my yellow ochre, it's a yellow ochre, my cadmium red light, then my alizarin crimson, my burnt sienna, my raw umber. But this is not the only raw umber that I use. I use Artisti, their raw umber as well. It's a wonderful raw umber. It's got a very strong green undertone, which I find in portraiture, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Then I use burnt umber, and I use ultramarine blue. Now, usually with workshops, I let the students do a color chart where they use these colors that looks like this. It's just to give them an idea of all the colors that you can mix by using only this limited color palette. And you know, if you mix like burnt sienna and ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson and raw umber, that's wonderful colors to use on your darker skins. So this is the palette that I use for all the colors, all the skin colors that I paint, and for the animals as well. Okay, a few of the nice to have colors is unbleached titanium, Italian brown ochre. It's also a wonderful one. It's a wonderful skin tone, this one, but it's a little bit transparent. So, but yes, if you start mixing this with white as well, it's a wonderful skin tone, and the same with the transparent oxide brown. Then Italian green umber. It's quite a lot like that this raw umber of Artisti, but it's quite a bit more transparent. It's a very transparent green. So if you mix it with your colors, it's very subtle, which is also wonderful to use with portraits. Then I find this one is extremely strong. So the staining properties of this one is much stronger than when you mix alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. Then bright pink or brilliant pink. This is also a color that you can mix if you use alizarin crimson and cadmium red light with a little bit of white. You can mix a color that's quite similar to this. But that's also, especially on your light skins, that's a wonderful color to use. Then the paint mediums that I use, I usually don't use a paint medium, but I've recently started to use liquid, Winsor & Newton liquid, especially during the winter months. It's a fast drying medium, but I will use it with my color blocking, the bottom layers, so that they can dry a little bit faster, so that I can start with the detail on top of that. So that's usually only with my color blocking, and not always, but especially during the winter months. Then the oil that I will use is safflower oil. Now I use safflower oil because I like the consistency of it. It's very thin. It's not as thick as what linseed oil is, and it's also lighter in color. Linseed oil tends to have a little bit of a yellow color to it, where this one is clearer. Okay, I use this also to clean my brushes with. I rinse my brushes in this while I am painting, and I wipe it. I don't wash my brushes every day. What I do is every day after I've painted, I will rinse it with the safflower oil, and I will wipe it with my paper towel, and I will leave it for the next day. By the end of the week, I will use dishwashing liquid, and I will just wash my brushes with dishwashing liquid. I mean, if dishwashing liquid can clean your pots and pans and get rid of all that grease, that's no reason why it will not clean your brushes. I find that using turps to clean the brushes, it's not environmentally friendly. How do you get rid of it? You cannot pour it down the drain. You cannot pour it in the garden. It will still end up in the environment. The fumes is not good for you. Even the odorless ones, I think it's also not good for your health. The only time that I will use genuine artist turps is when I use it for a painting technique, a dripping technique in the background. Then I will dilute the paint so that I can get the dripping technique. But for cleaning my brushes, I find that the safflower oil, it's not that harsh on your brushes either. So tomorrow my brushes are still fine to work with, and I will just, just at the end of the painting session, just clean it, rinse it and wipe it, and rinse it and wipe it until it's fairly clean. Leave it. Tomorrow I just carry on with the same brushes. After a week I will wash it properly. Okay, that's basically the painting mediums that I use. Then also a good tip that I can give you is quite often if you have to paint a flat background where you mix a specific color. If you mix it a second time, it's very hard to match it. You just cannot match the first time. So if you mix enough, you can buy these empty tubes. I bought these from Italian art shop. They open at this end. So you can just put your paint in there, roll it up, and this tube of paint will last just as long as your other tubes. So that's a very good tip that I can give you if you need to mix a color that you might need again, and you might not get the color exactly the same as the other times. Okay, the brushes that I use, I love angular brushes. Doesn't matter whether it's a cheap or an expensive brush. I found that the cheap brushes, this Primark brush is quite cheap. I use it, especially the small ones in this brand, I use a lot. It lasts just as long as the expensive brushes. But what I like about this, the shape of the angular brushes, I find that it's quite versatile. You can do fine work with the tip, you can paint a line, and you can use the flat end like that. And I use that in different sizes. You get different brands. This one's got a little bit of this is a Montmartre, which is a little bit of a longer handle. Then you also get these black silver ones, which is also not an expensive one. And then I also like to use the graduates daily around me, but what I also like is the sword or the dagger brushes when it gets to painting beards and animals with the furs, the fur of an animal, and this ivory daggers as well. This is a rosemary brush, which is lovely. Now, what I find with the angular brushes is they tend to start to split quite soon. You know, they don't last as long as the square brushes or the filberts. But what I will use them for then is to, when I do underpainting, I use a very dry brush technique where I scrub a lot, which is not good for new brushes. But yeah, they're fine for that thing. Then for painting backgrounds and clothes and bigger areas, I will use bigger brushes like this. And sometimes I will use a little bit of a finer brush, like in the eyes, if I need to do a little bit of detail, which is this black silver brush, which is also not an expensive brush. Palette knives, I only use palette knives to mix my paint with, and I've got two, which is these thin ones. They're wonderful to mix paint with. That's the only time I will use palette knives. Okay, and then canvas that I use. I usually paint on linen, a fine grain linen, and I let my canvases, I order them from Italian art shop, just send them the sizes and they stretch it for me, and I find that the quality is excellent. I will also sometimes use the fine grain canvas from them that's primed with a transparent primer, especially if I want to use different painting techniques in the background where I'm not going to cover the whole background. I find that also looks quite good. and also just order it. I decide what sort of sizes I will need, and I send it through to Sky. And the service is really excellent. So if you can't go and fetch it, they also can courier it to you. Okay, varnish. All my paintings get varnished. I don't varnish it because my agent fetch it from me when they are still wet. But he will wait for minimum of 4 to 6 months. I don't paint that thick, but it's very important to wait for the painting to be completely dry before you put varnish on it. So it's extremely important to follow the instructions of the manufacturer. We use Winsor & Newton, the satin varnish. But if the manufacturer suggests that you wait 6 to 12 months, I think that's the best to do it that way. But I find with varnish is that it evens the colors out, the dull and the shiny patches that you get on oil paintings. I find that some of the darker colors tend to dry a little bit duller than some of your lighter colors, so that evens it out, and it also protects the painting. Okay, then my favorite subject that I paint, I love to paint portraits. I used to paint a lot of animals before the portraits, but I eventually got very bored with the animals. But the portraits, I find that each and every portrait is different. Each and every portrait got its own challenges. I don't think I will ever get bored of painting portraits. I paint from photographs that I take myself. It happened before, once or twice before, that my agent supplied some photographs that one of his photographer friends gave to him, and I painted that. But I find if I don't work from my own photographs, I don't have that connection with the painting. And of course, when I take the photographs, I like to get to know the person a little, talk to them, get to know a little bit about their background. I always used to go out and look for people to paint, like Colk Bay, the fishermen. But one thing that I always do, I will always ask for their permission to photograph them. And what I also do is I've got a little booklet that I carry with me that I call my permission to paint booklet. And I let them write in the booklet that they give me permission to photograph them and to paint from the photograph. It's just to cover yourself. You know, with social media, it makes the world extremely small. So also only for no other purpose, and I will not give the photograph to anybody else. I usually pay them for taking the photographs as well. But what I lately tend to do more often is to get people to my studio to photograph. But then obviously I will not just take a person from the street and tell them come to my studio and photograph them. I will see if I can maybe find some of the people that works with my husband, or when we go to restaurants and I see a waitress that I think will make a nice painting, I will tell her that I'm an artist, give her my card, and ask her if I can paint her. And if she's interested, she can contact me. And then I will get that person to my studio and you know, more controlled conditions, take photographs with different lights, effects, play a little bit. And then I will pay them per hour. And I will also let them sign a contract that gives me permission to paint them, and that covers them as well, to tell them that I will only use the photograph for painting purposes, nothing else, and not give the photograph to anybody else to use for anything else. Okay, the equipment that I have in my studio, I've got my easel, and I've got a screen that I work from. I used to work from a TV, but I just plugged your memory stick in the back with the high definition TVs. That's actually the quality is extremely good, but at some point I decided to get a better computer screen. I can honestly say it's not such a massive difference. So you don't have to spend all that money on getting a very good quality computer screen. A good HD TV will work just as well. But what you have to keep in mind is that even with a computer screen, it tends to distort the image a little. So it stretches everything a little bit wider. So what I did was with the computer screen is on my computer, draw a square and measure the width and the height on the screen, and you can adjust it. It's usually the width that you have to pull in to make sure that it's square, and then use your photograph on it so that it doesn't distort your image. And you can do the same with a TV screen. You know, people on a TV screen always tend to look a little bit fatter than that they really are. So that's one of the things. It's not massive, but it does make a difference. And actually, when you start to measure the square, that's one of the reasons that I got the computer screen as well. But I didn't realize it happens on that as well. But it does. But you can adjust it. So just keep that in mind. Okay, that's the equipment that I have. Okay, now why do I work from photographs? I work from photographs because of the style. I take forever to do a painting, and to get somebody to sit for you for the amount of time that I spend on a painting, it will firstly cost me a fortune. And if you let somebody sit for you that's not used to sitting for a painting, it shows. They feel so uncomfortable because you're looking at them all the time. I've tried it. It just doesn't work. So the photographs is definitely, for me, a better option. But it is a good idea to, from time to time, just to practice from, drawing real people. I will sit and draw my husband when he's watching TV. He will not even notice I'm drawing him. Just quick sketches. So it's a very good idea just to keep your eye in. Okay, when I've taken my photographs, then I will go through them on the computer. I take quite a bit. I put my camera on burst. Usually when I'm on location taking photographs of people, my husband will have a little bit of a conversation with the person. I will just take photographs so that they don't pose for the photographs. You get more natural photographs that way. And then I will go through them and see what photographs I can use. What also helps quite a bit is that I play around with my composition on the computer. You can do it in Word. I've got CorelDRAW that I use, very old version of CorelDRAW. So just to see what composition will work the best, so that I can see on what size of canvases I need to order, especially when it gets to the bigger sizes. I quite often work on the small size that I work on is 500 by 700, which works quite well for most portraits. But with the bigger sizes, of course, it's so expensive, the canvases. I just want to make sure that my composition is perfect. So it's a very good idea just to play around with the composition on the computer to see where you're going. Maybe try something different to see if it's going to work. So I will definitely suggest doing that. Okay, once I'm happy with that, then I will put the photograph on my screen and I will draw it on my canvas. Smaller sizes, my 500 by 700s, I will draw freehand. When I started to paint portraits, I used to use a grid system. I could draw very well because I drew for years. When I studied graphic design, there were no computers. You had to be able to draw very well in order to become a graphic designer, which is not the case anymore. So I could draw very well, but for some reason, I didn't trust my own drawing ability, so I used the grid method. But eventually, I forced myself to move away from that and to trust my drawing ability, which was a very good decision to do. So I think it's very, very important to develop yourself all the time. What I will do with the bigger paintings, I will just get more or less half that way, and then I will use a scale divider just to help me to more or less map the face out, because it's hard to get that distance between yourself and the canvas. With the 500 by 700, it's much easier. You can get a little bit of distance between yourself and your canvas, and you can draw and see what you're doing. The bigger canvas is a little bit harder. So scale divider works really well there, just to map it out. And also to check yourself up on a scale divider helps quite a bit when you need to check yourself up. Okay, my painting process, I always start with an underpainting. Now I call that my problem solving phase. I start with raw umber. It's always raw umber, and then I block in my color. Sometimes with the underpainting, I will also use pan pastel, but I seem to always go back to my raw umber. Just a very tonal value study, no detail. Then I block my color in, and then the fun part starts. And that's the detail. I absolutely love to paint detail. Okay, now how would I describe my style? I'm a realist. Not a photorealist. So if you see the actual paintings, you will still be able to see brush strokes. And when it gets to clothes and things like that, that's not that important. I tend not to paint any detail when it gets to the clothes. I will do that as quick as possible. I always had that still life part of the painting that I do not enjoy painting that much. I do not like to watch painting videos that's made by other people on YouTube, because I feel I do not want to get influenced by them. But I have, like when David Casson came to South Africa a few years ago, I attended a week-long workshop with him. I find it's important when you attend workshops is to take all the knowledge that you can get from that, but make it your own. Develop your own style and make it your own. Okay, a few tips that I can give upcoming artists is, first thing is try and work with the best quality material that you can afford. You spend a lot of time and energy on a painting, and especially the canvas. We tend to, especially when you start to paint, work on an old canvas that you painted on before. The canvas is your whole basis of your painting. So it's extremely important to work on the best canvas you can afford and using the best paint that you can afford. I find, especially when it gets to portraiture, there's some brands, some of your student quality or even school quality paints that for portraits, it just doesn't work. It might work for other genres, but not for portraits. And then paint as much as you can. Join art societies so that you can exhibit with them, so that you can get all the necessary exposure. You have to practice and practice and practice. And when it gets to painting portraits, like the eye that I'm going to show the video, you can just do quick studies. Just to practice. This is an animal eye. Another eye. And then this, the people at, this exercise was actually to match the colors, but I find it was such a valuable exercise. I just took a piece of the cheek and let them paint a piece of the cheek. The advantage of it is you don't paint a portrait, so you basically confusing your brain. So you match the colors and you match the shapes and everything, and everybody did this perfect, because your brain doesn't think it's a portrait, it has to be perfect. So it's a very good exercise to help you to identify colors in the skin and to paint those colors that you can see when it gets to painting the skin. Then another thing that's also very important, and this helps quite a bit, is when you go on holiday or go away for the weekend, just to do quick sketches like this. Just a few, it would help your hand-eye coordination, help you to work with tonal values. Even if you just do an animal eye like that. So you can just, even if you just take a magazine with a few photographs in a magazine. Okay, these are my own photographs, but it's just, the idea is to draw and to paint, and to draw and to paint as much as you can to keep your hand-eye coordination in. Okay, I think that's basically it, and now we can go over to the video. If Lizzie can start the video for us. It's a 20-minute video, When I did the video, I made it quite a bit faster because to fit everything into 20 minutes. So you will see some of the areas are very fast, some of them are not that fast. But yes, it's quite a bit faster than what I actually paint. So just keep that in mind. Okay, thanks, Lizzie, if you can start the video for us.
I'm working with Michael Harding oil colors, and the colors that I'm using for this demo are from left to right: titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, raw umber, burnt umber, and ultramarine blue. I mix a few extra colors to add to this palette. The first one is orange. I use yellow ochre and cadmium red light for this orange. The next color that I'm going to mix will be a green. For that, I will use yellow ochre and ultramarine blue. I make sure that this green is slightly more towards the yellow. Then I mix a purple, and for that I use ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. It's a fairly deep purple. Then I mix a brilliant or bright pink, and for that I use cadmium red light and alizarin crimson, and I will add a little bit of white to that. I then mix a black using ultramarine blue and burnt umber. I use a little bit more burnt umber so that my black is more towards the brown. It's more a brown black. Now I mix a basic skin tone, and for this basic skin tone I will use yellow ochre and I will add a little bit of cadmium red light to it. I get an orange, and in order to tone this orange down, I'll add a little bit of ultramarine blue. The result is quite a muddy color, but that's fine. I will test this basic skin tone by taking a little bit of it and put it one side on my palette and add a little bit of white to that, just to make sure that I'm moving in the right direction. Okay, now that I have all my colors ready, I can start to paint my eye. During this first step, I start off by defining the shapes and basically drawing the eye using raw umber. I use a very dry brush technique to make sure that I apply my paint as thin as possible. I work with the basic tonal values and the basic shapes. I keep it simple, and I make sure that I do not paint any detail now. When I'm happy with all my basic shapes, I start to block in the color. I work from dark to light. During this step, I basically want to cover my canvas, putting the right colors more or less in the right places. You will notice that I don't start adding white too soon. I find if I start adding white too soon that my skin tends to look chalky and dirty. I keep it simple, and I don't paint any detail at this point of time. I use this basic skin tone that I mixed in the beginning all the time, and I adjust it as I go along. I add a little bit of the cadmium red light, I add a little bit of the green, I add a little bit of the purple. I look very carefully at what I see. I ask myself constantly, what do I see? Sometimes it's just subtle changes in color, and I love to work with the optical mixture of colors, like putting two complementaries next to each other, a little bit of pink and a little bit of green, and the way those two colors almost dance with each other creates this almost luminosity in the skin. Okay, now that the skin is covered, we can start with the detail. This is the fun part. Now I start to paint with the light. I start working with the white, but I don't use pure white. I'm constantly adding color to my white. Add a little bit of red, a little bit of green, a little bit of pink, a little bit of yellow, and I adjust it all the time. It's very important that I still ask myself all the time, what do I see? I don't blend as much as it might seem. I let the eye blend the colors, not the brush. Okay, let's move to the inside of the eye and let the magic begin. I love to start with my iris being almost black. In this case, where the eye is blue, I use ultramarine blue with a little bit of burnt umber added to that, and I add white for it to start to bring in the light in the eye. Now we'll gradually start to bring in the lighter colors until I'm happy with the tonal value. Be careful not to make the white of the eye too light. So I'm constantly squinting and comparing the tonal value of the white of the eye with the other areas of the skin to make sure that it's not too light and that it doesn't come too much to the front. When painting an eye, your light is just as important as your shadows. So you want a difference in tonal value between the lights and the darks, and especially in an eye, because the light highlights and the reflections is what creates life in the eye. So it's very important to look what you see and to paint what you see. Notice how everything just starts to pop as soon as you start to play with the light. I'm also still constantly looking at my shapes and adjusting the shapes where I feel it's necessary, especially when it gets to the iris. And what helps me to get the eye to look in the right direction is to look at the shape that you get on the white area on the left side and the right side of the iris. I look at the shapes that I get and I look at the size and the position of that. In other words, I'm working with negative shapes. constantly reminding myself that there's color in everything. And everything, every little highlight has a shape. I'm using the light and the shadows to help me to create the shape and the roundness of the eye. I'm using very light brush strokes. I put very little pressure on the tip of my brush. Brush is almost a tool that I use to sculpt with. I put paint on and I remove paint. Very delicately. I'm revisiting some of the highlights just to make sure that I've got it light enough, because I want that highlight to really pop. Now I'm moving back to the skin area and I start to bring in more light. So it needs quite a bit more light. So I will gradually build the light and the highlights up until I'm happy with it. Okay, before I carry on with the skin, I've got a little bit of eyelashes that I need to define. Going to do that as well. A little bit of shadow of the eyelash. Just break the highlight with the brush a little. Look carefully what I see, what is happening there where the eyelashes are. They're not very prominent, so it's just a few little shapes, but it does make a difference. I make also sure that I keep my edges soft. I'm working with skin, so it's very important that I keep my edges fairly soft. My highlights are not light enough yet, so I'm going to keep on working on them, making it lighter and lighter gradually until they are light enough. highlights are so important because they help you to create the texture of the skin. Okay, we're almost there. It's now just for the eyebrows. I painted the eyebrows, once again working from dark to light. And now I'm just finishing off the lower eyelid by putting the last final few eyelashes that I can see. And then we're done.
Elize, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I'm quite speechless. You must have incredible patience to work. So that all those fine details is what makes it. Tell me, I want to ask you, do you work on both eyes at the same time? To keep the colors the same?
Yes, I usually do, especially when it gets to defining the shapes. I think it's very important to work on both together, so that you can see that they're working together. When it gets to the finer detail, I will probably just finish one and then carry on to the other one. But it's very important to sit back and to make sure that your eyes are working together.
That they work together.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's some messages coming in how brilliant that was. And then also just if you can let us know the workshops that you do, that you offer, and I know you also do workshops with Sonia, what and where, and any information about those that you can let us know.
Yes, I've got all the dates of the workshops. As I finalize dates and venues and people that organize it, I put it on my website. So there is a page on my website where you will find the dates and the venues, and also the person that's organizing it, the contact person that you can contact for the workshop. Just one thing that I want to mention about the Sedgefield workshop that's coming up in September. That's a 5-day workshop. I've tried it the first time last year, the 5-day workshop, and it's actually worked very well because you could fit in so much more, quite a few more exercises and quite a few more time to paint, because I find usually with the workshop it's just not enough time to finish a painting, especially when you do a lot of detail, but at least I cover the whole process, my process. And then also I do art boot camp twice a year with Sonia, one in Brits and one in a wine farm in Ladysmith. And that's usually very popular. It's also over 5 days, and we cover a different subject every day. I usually will do something that's got something to do with animals or portraits, but it's not a whole portrait. It will be an element, like elements of portrait painting, like painting an eye, a nose, or a mouth, or mixing skin colors and matching skin tones, or animal fur or animal eyes, or just a monochromatic study. and Sonia will usually do something that's got something to do with drawing or journaling or back to the basics or portrait, still life painting or landscape painting. So, but it's every day something different. But that's also, in every year we change it a little. So we've got this year, I think it's about the 6th or 7th year that we're doing it at Oaks Rest in Ladysmith. And we've got some people that's been there every year. Because we're changing it every year. So that's also
okay. So yeah, so do they get booked up quite quickly? So if anybody's interested, to keep an eye on your web,
the boot camp in Ladysmith this year we were fully booked within 24 hours. After we opened the booking. So we've got a waiting list for that one. It's actually the first time that it happened so quickly. So I think that
okay. So if anybody is keen to
the best will be just to contact the organizer, or if I'm organizing it, they can contact me. And if we are fully booked, I will just put their name on a waiting list, because I find it quite often happens that people cancel closer to the time. But then we can make a plan to.
And unfortunately, at the moment, we also don't know whether things are going to happen or not happen. And
absolutely.
So we just keep trying to do things, and hopefully, in between waves, we can get some things done. There's some questions coming in about your little palette.
I forgot to mention that.
Your easel. I can see it. What is that?
It's quite small, and when I bought it, I ordered it from America. It's David Casson, his brainchild. When I got it, I thought, gee, this is so small. I'm not going to work with such a small palette. But the advantage of it is that you clean it on a regular basis. So with a bigger palette, you just tend to move on to a different section. This one, you are forced to clean it, which is a good thing, because you clear your mind as well. And by the end of the day, the whole thing isn't dry and tacky. And it's got 2 sections here to put your paint out. So what I do is my slow drying colors I put at the bottom, and the fast drying colors at the top. And I put masking tape there, so I just rip the masking tape off. It's easier to clean, especially in this design. And another tip that I also can, what I use to clean my palette is I first just scrape it off with a palette knife, and then I just use these wet wipes. So I also don't use turbs for that, because the wet wipes works wonders to clean the palette.
Okay, fantastic.
Actually,
I really like the masking tape. That you can just put off and throw away. Okay, brilliant. Okay.
And the advantage of the parallel palette is that you get the same light that you get on your painting, because it stands next to your painting. So when you mix your paint, you can exactly see where you're going.
Exactly. Okay, fantastic. Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Elize, that's been absolutely brilliant. I'm sure everybody's learned something, and we're absolutely totally in awe of your skills. And thank you so much for sharing so much with us this evening. Okay, there are lots of lovely comments that have come through here, just to say thank you so much, and that was incredible, and that was absolutely amazing. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you for hosting. It's lovely. That was actually brilliant. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely wonderful to have you. Thank you. Okay, I think we can